in from the Kapiti office is our velvet expert and Asian market manager, Rhys Griffiths. And here beside me in the office here in Wellington is our venison marketing manager, Nick Taylor. So when you have any questions around our product, our markets and our products, they are the people to be asking. We haven't prepared formal presentations. We thought we might just make a few general observations around the dairy industry and the state of some of our markets to begin with, and then have a good chat about where the dairy industry is at the moment and some of the things which are affecting us and are coming up. I thought we'd just start off again, just introducing ourselves. My name's Innes Moffat. I've been CEO of Dairy Industry New Zealand since about October last year. I knew that my predecessor was a very clever man. I didn't realise he had quite such foresight to be leaving the industry at a time when things have not necessarily gone very smoothly over the last couple of months. But he's now off with the QE2 Trust doing good works. So I've been with Dairy Industry New Zealand for about 15 years now. I have a background with the red meat sector and was venison marketing manager for a few years, and then had been running the Dairy Industry's Primary Growth Partnership, the P2P program, which is designed to assist dairy farmers improve their productivity and also open up some new markets. But yep, took up the mantle of being CEO about 6 months ago now, and it's certainly been an interesting period. Dairy Industry New Zealand is an industry-owned producer board. We collect levy from dairy farmers and venison processors and exporters. Our board is 50% farmers, 50% marketers and processors. So we do like to think that we do speak on behalf of the industry as a whole. Our core functions are around quality assurance, funding research into improving efficiency and productivity in dairy farming, advocacy on behalf of our dairy farmers and product marketers, and also the promotion of venison and velvet in international markets around the world. We export about 95% of what we produce, both venison and velvet, and so changes in international markets certainly have quite a big impact upon our industry. You probably will be aware that the dairy industry has been reducing in size, perhaps over the last decade. We have around about 900,000 deer on farms. There are around about 1,400 farmers with deer, probably 70% in the South Island, 30% in the North Island. Of those deer farmers, probably about 80% also run sheep and beef. So there are very few standalone deer farmers. But we had been seeing deer numbers increase over the last 2 years, particularly for velvet production, but also breeding hinds had begun to increase as well. We probably will see a bit of a check to the growth in the deer herd this year because of a combination of factors. But there was a good spirit in the dairy industry leading into the COVID-19 issues. I'll get the guys to talk a wee bit more about the impact that has had on our sector and how we might be coming out of it. But this has been a pretty good week for us here at DINS. Particularly, there's been some rain on the East Coast, which is great news for our friends and our farmers up there. They are, like sheep and beef and dairy farmers, they've been having a pretty tough time of it. It's been pretty sobering listening to some of their stories around the shortage of feed and shortage of stock water. So it is really good that there's been a bit of rain up there. Probably not enough yet for anybody to restore feed levels across the North Island, but at least it's put a smile on a few people's faces. Another good piece of news this week has been around improvements in access into China for venison, and perhaps Rhys will be able to touch on that a little bit later. Also, I think we're kind of prices to farmers for venison have taken a real hit this year with the closure of our markets, but I think we're probably through the worst of that, and with sort of some a bit more clarity and a bit more new market development, I think we are beginning to see that the venison exporting companies are signalling that they will begin increasing the schedule over the next month or two. Nick will have a bit of an update on some of the work that we are doing around developing new channels for venison and some retail programs which we've just got up and running. And then finally, as with all agricultural producers, we were pleased to have some certainty around the freshwater proposals that came out last week. There have been a couple of wins in there for the deer sector, and they provide our farmers with a bit more certainty. They can begin getting on with implementing some of those actions. We're very, very supportive of the concept of all farmers having farm environment plans, but not just having them, actually using them and making sure that they are useful so that they can be improving their soil and water management for the benefit of their operations. And one last thing that I've got written down on my piece of paper is around greenhouse gas emissions. Dairy Industry New Zealand is a signatory to He Waka Eka Noa. We are a funding partner to that. So we certainly are committed to assisting farmers account for and then begin to mitigate their greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to a changing climate. But of course we do have concerns around the cost of this and the imposition that will come on farmers, and also the treatment of methane as a greenhouse gas. But we're certainly in for the ride over the next couple of years. It's an important issue for the country. I'll hand over to Rhys now, and Rhys can give you a quick update on the deer velvet sector in New Zealand and some of the activities which Dairy Industry New Zealand is up to, and what the prospects might be for the coming season. Over to you, Rhys.
Oh, just on mute at the moment, hang on.
Take off mute.
Thank you very much for that, Innes. I've just come off mute. Thank you very much, Innes. It's great to hand over. I did prepare a presentation, but I've had some technical difficulties, so apologies there. I guess when I start prepare a presentation, poor old Innes might go a bit worried about that because I can tend to overdo things a bit, so it might be a bit of a saving grace. So the New Zealand velvet sector, I guess, was quite focused on the commodity velvet trade up until about 8 to 10 years ago. Most of our velvet was being exported to one single market within one geographic market, so into the traditional Oriental medicine market in South Korea. That had a few problems because there were about 5 main importers of velvet, and we'd often see prices go in quite large swings or quite high volatility. So one year a return to a farmer might be around $100, and another year might have been about $40 or $50. When we look back prior to about 8 to 10 years ago, we can see that that overall the velvet industry was in decline. About 8 to 10 years ago, we approached a large food company in South Korea just to really try and get an understanding of how the ginseng industry had kind of evolved and become quite a large industry. At that time, the large ginseng company was looking at a new ingredient, and we managed to change it from a fact-finding mission into a bit of a chance to sell velvet, New Zealand velvet, as a potential new product or ingredient for them. But one of the things we're quite keen on doing is trying to entrench the provenance story of the New Zealandness of the velvet ingredient that they were using. And it worked really, really well. So over the last 8 to 10 years, we've seen the velvet industry grow from a farm gate value of around $28 million up to around about $106 million farm gate ending the season last year. So, you know, very, very positive. It wasn't a complete smooth line. We did have some bumps on the way, though. One of the big things were that those bumps, those peaks and troughs, were smoothed out somewhat. So, so we were really heartened with the type of impact that those health food companies did. So entrenching the New Zealand velvet story then quickly took off with other big Korean brands such as Lotte, LG, Yuhan, and a few of the other big Korean food companies on the back of our strong and ongoing partnership with Korean Ginseng Corp. So we're now left as a velvet industry in a reasonably strong position. Production has doubled, I guess, and the overall farm gate has nearly quadrupled, as I just alluded to. So both price and production increased to quite a nice degree. However, it'll be fair to say that the velvet sector wasn't immune to some of the issues that affected us with COVID-19, but those issues were really more around supply chain disruptions, around crackdowns in a number one market of South Korea, of people actually being able to go in and see the Oriental medicine doctor, of people going and visiting these modern and contemporary stores to buy their velvet or have their velvet iced tea at a trendy cafe. So those sales did definitely drop off, but we did see quite a nice pickup on the online sales and the home shopping channel networks, which also represent quite a big outlet for these new contemporary products, health products that contain New Zealand velvet. All of the success that we've been having isn't just because of the rise of these healthy food companies in South Korea. They have really helped us along nicely, but also the opening up of the market in China has really paid some pretty big dividends for us as well. So in China, our exports have increased. In China, the consumption, as the individual wealth increases, the consumption of health products like velvet has also increased. So that brings me to another point of kind of the potential impacts of COVID-19 is actually we see that there could be some potential upside as more consumers are seeking more health type products. So I guess velvet is probably better positioned than many other product groups because it is a product that consumers in Asia will go out to seek for, particularly for immune function, but also anti-fatigue would be the two most common reasons why people would consume velvet products in both China and South Korea. So we've just finished a group of online meetings with our major food customers in South Korea, and they do see some potential possible growth in this market over the coming while. We have to be quite careful because the velvet sector has been growing. Prices did ease back a little bit this year. So from around about $132 per kilo 2 years ago, or the previous season, to possibly about $120 or possibly a little bit less than that over the past season. But our understanding, so while it's disappointing to see prices come back, that there was probably more in relation to the increasing growth of velvet production. So velvet production has been growing nicely, prices have been going nicely, and we've probably had a lovely relationship between supply and demand, but that potentially for us might have just swapped over. So we have to be quite careful about the increasing production. We know consumption will carry on increasing, but the level of consumption increase is probably starting to be outpaced by the level of production increase. So it's something that we're having to watch as an industry. But the future, there are some promising signals in the future. So where to next? I guess one of the big things is we've seen the success around healthy food in South Korea. We know that China is growing as a general consumer of health products like velvet. Now the big challenge is for us to engage with the big health food companies in China. And to date, there's been some pretty positive responses by some of these big food companies as they look over and see what has happened with this health food sector in South Korea, and then in other markets like Taiwan and what have you. So there's lots of opportunities in our sector, which is awesome. I could go on about it for a long time, but I suspect Innes will be quite keen for me to wrap it up there. But to look to take any questions, I guess, at the conclusion of our of our discussion today. So thank you.
Thank you, Rhys. You could go on for ages, and I always enjoy listening to it. hopefully there'll be some other questions as well. I'll now ask Nick to give us a bit of an update on the state of the venison market as well, and some of the activities that Dairy Industry New Zealand engages in on behalf of our exporters and farmers.
I'll just come a bit closer. So hi everyone, I'm the Venison Marketing Manager. So I work predominantly with the venison processors and marketing companies to support their activities overseas to promote our wonderful venison, which has been a challenging period for us with COVID. So a lot of our venison goes into the food service sector as a premium product. And so with restaurants in our key markets of Europe and the United States closed, that's meant that there has been a drop in demand for that. A couple of positives during the time is that we've seen sustained demand for venison going into manufactured items. So in the US, burgers is quite big over there, and in Europe into the likes of sort of goulashes and casserole type dishes and things like that. So that's been positive. I guess it's positive, you know, we're happy to see that restaurants in those markets are starting to open up. Of course, they are operating like we are here in New Zealand with social distancing, so that they're not seeing the numbers that they have been. But that is a positive, and we are starting to get customers putting orders through again and seeing that demand going up. We've just had the April export stats come through, and one thing that I was really pleased to see is that the demand for chilled venison, which is generally the premium products going into food service, in the US was on par with the same time last year. So there's product moving and getting into the market, which is really good. I think another thing that the COVID crisis has done for us is to put a bit more emphasis on some direct-to-consumer activity. Not just, so here in New Zealand, certainly we've seen the companies making venison a lot more available, but also overseas as well. We've seen a lot of the importers turning to the consumer markets and developing more products for them. We probably some of them weren't as quick as other industries because they haven't had consumer products before. So there's been issues around, you know, creating packaging and finding channels for those products. But again, it's a positive to see that now happening. One of the good news stories. So we've been operating a summer promotion for the last few years over in the Benelux, trying to increase the consumption of venison like we do here in New Zealand, you know, in the summer on barbecues and things like that. And while unfortunately a couple of the importers have pulled out this year due to COVID, we've had one in Belgium who has persisted, and actually we've now got Savannah in the Carrefour, which is a premium supermarket over there at retail level. So they've got a number of different cuts, which is really great to see. So still seeing some opportunities there. Yeah, I think the other positive that we're sort of seeing is that with the downturn in some of those key markets, we've seen our producers and marketers looking at some of the markets that we haven't been so active in the last few years. And so again, through the April stats, we've seen significant increases into some of these smaller markets. So the likes of Austria and Singapore are a couple of those examples. I think that's great for us, and the hope is that we can sustain and support them in developing those new markets as we continue to, I guess, spread the risk of not being overexposed in a couple of key markets there. The other area is of course China. So the slowdown in exports came just sort of when the companies were getting really excited about the opportunities available to them in China. And so we'll be seeing, I think, over the next half of the year, a significant increase in activity. We've been working with some chefs up there to develop, looking at how venison can be used in traditional Chinese cuisine. And we'll be looking at running some chef workshops and working with our marketers and producers up there to get venison in front of more chefs and increase its profile a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of the highlights that's been going on for me over the last wee while. So look,
okay, thank you. Thanks, Nick. So that's that's enough of us just talking. I see there's some messages popping up there. Is there? That's disappeared. So yeah, if this is the way this works, questions then.
Cool, thank you, guys. The first question I actually put up there, just one for Rhys, I guess. What's the state of, like, is there ongoing research into the efficacy of those velvet as in food products to boost that immune function and that, or is it sort of based on the more older medicine side of it?
Yeah, so great question. So yep, there has been a lot of historical use due to traditional medicine, but at Dairy Industry New Zealand we have put together a technical manual which talks about the the usage of velvet, so its main functions, including immune function and anti-fatigue. So there are chapters dedicated to those, which do go through some of the research papers that have been done on them around the world and here in New Zealand as well. So there was a study at Massey University through the Canine Centre for Immune Function, for example, and a few other, we'd probably term low-level studies, so not enough to get them with a regulatory claim. We do know that there are some big food companies with some health functional food products, and they may be developing such products. To get a health functional food registration, you do need to have some evidence for the likes of the KFDA. So there is some evidence there, and there's certainly been some trial work done on both of these areas, but not enough to get an actual claim for the products as such. This going to the health food sector is quite new, as I was saying, so that's probably going to be the next level for these companies to get involved with. Previous to this, the oriental medicine sector has largely relied on that traditional oriental medicine claim, but we're hoping to.
Whoops, he's frozen.
It was tricky. I had a bit of a follow-up question, which was so will potential markets be more in the Asian region where you've got that sort of those health benefit claims coming from, or where, are these products going to be potentially going to spread to mass markets elsewhere? I don't know, Innes, whether you can.
Yeah, I think our view is that within countries where there is already a familiarity with deer velvet as an ingredient in traditional Chinese medicine, that is the natural place for us to be pursuing these opportunities rather than trying to introduce it as a brand new product in Western markets. There certainly are companies who are targeting Western market with specific products for boosting sports performance or assisting with joint health. But from an industry perspective, we do see that there are still big gains to be made in some of the fast-growing Asian markets, becoming increasingly sophisticated in the way that they wish to consume traditional Chinese medicines. So as Rhys was saying, Taiwan, Vietnam, and then the 18 or 20 provinces of China, which we haven't been to yet, which each of them represent a vast economy in their own right. Still
lots of potential, yeah. So maybe Nick, the next question might be good for you since Rhys is frozen. The New Zealand venison is a relatively new product in China. Do you think that's a positive for future sales?
Yeah, look, I think certainly before the COVID, we had seen significant growth in venison sales up into China, which was a really positive sign. I think you're seeing, as Rhys sort of alluded to before, we're seeing, I guess, increased spending on health and well-being by Chinese consumers. And so venison is placed really well as being a very healthy red meat. It's very high in protein, very low in fat, high in zinc and iron. And our understanding is that those sorts of, I guess, Western ideals of health are also becoming more important to those consumers as well. So yeah, I think it ticks, many of the boxes to be a really positive story for the Chinese consumers.
Great. And what about the whole deer dairy story? Like making deer milk cheese. It's made here. It seems to be difficult to get, and we've heard it's very good for asthma and skin conditions. Well, I hadn't heard that. But.
I guess it's we're certainly very interested to see how deer milk progresses. It would be fair to say it's in the exploratory phase at the moment. There are only 2 properties where they are milking a small number of deer. Yep, certainly it's nice to see it being made into cheese. It's occasionally available with some restaurants here in New Zealand. But I guess the main thing that they are looking into it for is its nutraceutical properties. And there are a couple of companies in Asia who are working with the New Zealand companies around the development of some of those cosmetic or skin health products. So it's certainly very, very interesting to observe where this is going to get to.
Mm-hmm. Welcome back, Rhys.
Yeah,
there was another question. That's okay. Another question. What barriers are there for repeating the Velvet Health story, food story in China?
Yeah, so again, another really good question. I did see that before I got frozen out. There are different barriers, different set of challenges, I guess, to engage before we can really engage with these food companies, but we feel like we're overcoming those. They're health functional, so to sell a Velvet product as these types of healthy food products that we do in South Korea, in China, it does have to be registered as a health functional food. So again, trial work needs to be done on individual products, and the cost of that is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it can take up to 2 years to get a product approved by the, now SAMA, State Administration for Market Regulation. That's not to say that products can't be approved with Velvet. There are 210 current products in China that have a health functional food claim, or what they term as a blue hat. They're all domestic products. So ours would be a first foreign product into, well, not that we have a product, but New Zealand, if New Zealand Velvet as an ingredient is used by big Chinese food companies, it will be the first foreign ingredient, I guess, used by these food companies. So we understand that there are many companies that, well, we know because we speak to the companies, they're quite interested, and they now believe that this pathway is now clear for us to be able to operate. We know because we speak to the companies that believe that this pathway is now clear for a few more hurdles. That's why it's taken us a little bit longer than we would have hoped to have kind of realised our aspirations with this market, but we are on the way to achieving those. I see another question.
You might
I
still
see
be on
another
mute.
question there on health product. Oh,
Yep.
Is that me or?
Perhaps you can go ahead, Rhys. I think you can answer that one.
Okay. I see there's another question that's come through. Are there other co-products going to the Asian markets?
Whoops, you're breaking up again, Rhys. Maybe I can.
Other co-products.
Maybe I can chip in there. Yes. Yep. So deer are reasonably well.
Mentioned in the Chinese deer bones are mentioned, but actually the Asian oh, sorry.
You're breaking up, Rhys. So maybe I'll jump in.
Other co-products. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Yep. We're going to have to improve the internet connectivity with the Kapiti office. Yes, so deer are a revered animal in traditional Chinese medicine, and so there are various parts of the animal which do have health-giving properties. So things like deer sinews are used in cuisine, rich in collagen, good for joint health. Deer tails carry some medical properties in traditional Chinese cuisine, and the deer pizzle as well is also used for health-giving properties. So those all add up to making a valuable contribution towards the returns for New Zealand deer funds.
So that's perfect. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
If I've turned my video on? Awesome. Thank you very much for that. And yep, sorry you won't get to see my face now, but yep, so you did right, Innes. They are used in traditional medicine. They're not, they go through the same type of traditional medicine channel markets that, that I'm sure many people will be familiar with, but they're not prescribed through the Chinese pharmacopoeia. So as Innes alluded to, there are specific things. People in Asia will use tails for their back, for sinews for their collagen, as Innes mentioned. So they are well respected and well regarded, but they don't quite have that same medicinal classification that velvet antler has.
And deer tails taste horrible as well.
They certainly
Just
do.
in case you were tempted.
Sinews quite nice. Deer tails taste horrible, and we won't get into pizzles.
Are those kind of products more maybe embraced by the older generation, or just I wonder, or has that sort of translated down to the younger generation who are much maybe more metropolitan and?
Hey, so that's a good question. So in South Korea, one of the biggest consumer groups of velvet antler are kids for growth and development, but it actually goes right through the generations in South Korea. But we do definitely see there are lots of really contemporary, modern, innovative oriental medicine clinics that are pediatric, that are targeting kids, and a lot of velvet gets consumed through that, as well as a lot of contemporary tear and go type of products that you can buy from a health food store. In China, actually, consuming velvet below about 18 isn't really considered. So that does go into the older population a little bit more. But when I say older population, I'm kind of 50 now, and I do know a lot of people around my age. So it gets targeted, I guess, towards the busy executive wanting to keep fit, keep healthy, and keep working hard. So as well as the much older population.
Great. What's the domestic market doing as far as venison goes, Nick? Must be growing, is it?
Yeah, so over the last few years, I don't know if you've noticed, but certainly I have at the local supermarket, there has been more and more venison products available, and from different companies too, which is really great. Since COVID as well, I think we've seen a few more companies that have been dealing mainly with exports have started to put a few domestic products on the market as well, utilising some of the online channels, so things like Grab One and the Container Door and things like that as a new way of reaching customers as well. I think the other positive thing about the mix of products we're seeing is quite good. So we've got sort of a range of mince, meatball, sausage products from some of the companies, right through to Silverfern Farms have just released this year their tri-tip steak, which is a premium cut at the supermarket, and then some of the direct-to-customer deals are for the French racks and the short loins, which are generally have been food service cuts as well. So it's a nice mixture there for a variety of price points.
Yeah. Sarah's just asked, how are you capturing the My Food Bag audience?
So look, I understand we do have one of our companies does supply venison into My Food Bag. And so I know I'm fairly certain that the companies have been busy talking to some of the other food delivery meal options over recent weeks and months, looking at opportunities for them to be supplying that market too.
Right. Cool. I've got one more question for Rhys, and that's about what does velvet tea taste like? Sounds intriguing.
Actually, if you do get up to Seoul and able to go around some of the kind of cafes around Solio, some really trendy cafes called New Origin cafes. They're owned, or they've been launched by Yuhan, the largest pharmaceutical company in South Korea. And they make an awesome velvet iced tea. I've had velvet and many co-products of many different iterations throughout Asia, and I can absolutely say that these are absolutely delicious. So they mix it in with apple. It's quite sweet, and they call it the energy tea. And they say it sells very, very well on a Friday morning, particularly for people that have gone out on a Thursday night. But I wouldn't know about that.
The new Barocca.
That's right. And actually, some of the products that have been sold are sold even to students, as I say, in South Korea, about 18 to, and it is kind of like a healthy V, I guess. So.
Right. The new V. Yeah, that's good alliteration. So has anyone else got any more questions? It's been a really interesting session. Thank you, all three of you, for your insights. That was really good. And I think Sarah's has been taping it, so others can go and have a listen. But thanks very much for your time.